Welcome to the Marshall Pruitt Podcast and a Week in Sports Cars interview episode. Who do we have? Someone you probably never heard of if you are a straight-up racing fan. The name Jordan Wiseley, I'm guessing, might not resonate with you if you are indeed hardcore sports car fan, love endurance racing, know your IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship teams and drivers, even know your IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge training category drivers. That's where you'll find Jordan Wiseley, a new entry on the entry list within the last couple of months, competing within the hemisphere of Brian Herta Autosport, the factory Hyundai team, which also has a number of great customer teams that they help support and whatnot. And so Jordan, you'll find on the entry list the teammate to Cabot Bigham in this number 74 Dealey Motorsports Hyundai Elantra NTCR. Why Jordan might not stand out to you, and you might wonder, well, maybe I did see his name pop up, but I wonder what other forms of racing it came from. Well, the answer is none. Nothing. Bit of a two-wheel background, but genuinely, this year, through his relationship with Hyundai, decided, I've always wanted to try four-wheel motor racing, and within a comically short amount of time, has done enough to get credentialed by IMSA to compete in its second tier, closest to the top tier category. So this is truly someone who just decided this year that he wanted to try this, has proven that he has the talent and capabilities to do so, and is here. This never happens. So where that in and of itself would be plenty to be fascinating and worthy of doing a episode of the Week in Sports Cars with Jordan, the other thing, which is just coincidental but also kind of hilarious, I know Jordan, don't know him personally other than this interview we've done, but I've known of Jordan for quite some time, as has my wife Chabrel. Why? We are longtime lovers of the MTV The Challenge reality show, which is where we know Jordan from. We just finished watching the most recent season where he's the champion. And I think this is his third championship, maybe four, I forget how many. This is a guy who we know from competing, and we're not talking about dating shows and giving people roses and that kind of nonsense. The Challenge is about the most grueling contest you're going to find, something where if you aren't throwing up and pulling muscles and quitting, you're not doing things properly. This is a guy who, despite having a limitation that many others would consider pretty problematic, one of his hands was not fully formed at birth, and so things like gripping poles and doing a lot of the lifting and pulling challenges, he cannot ignore them, gets no pass, has to do them, and wins, and wins, and wins. And so naturally, gripping a steering wheel, different for him than anyone else. And yet, he's a multiple champion in the challenge. It is all about physical strength, physical endurance, and mental endurance, which he has proven over and over again to be champion level. And so naturally, despite having a bit of a physical item to overcome, which he has never let be an excuse, here we have someone who has mastered the physical and mental challenges required in the challenge, saying, that's all about enduring. Let's try something else about enduring, endurance sports car racing. And so here we have the gift of somebody who is just doing phenomenal things. To close here, you'll also learn that there's a pretty good check that comes with winning the challenge, and Jordan is not somebody to just sit on that and enjoy the riches. You'll hear later in the interview about the war in Ukraine and something that I just consider to be phenomenal that he has done. You want to talk about people taking real and true action for the betterment of others? This guy has done that and is about that. And then we close talking about a new movie he's starring in called Helmet. I saw the trailer for it. I still don't. Oh, he told us what it's about, so I have a better idea, but I I can't wait to watch it because I'm fascinated, because it's either the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. I tend to love both forms of movies, so neither one of them are bad. But we recorded this towards the end of June, just prior to the Watkins Glen IMSA event. So apologies for taking just a little bit to get this turned around, but he has indeed been racing, getting on track, getting more experience. Cannot wait to see how far he can take this new chapter in his life. So let's get rolling with Jordan Wiseley, all brought to us by Cooper Tires, the Justice Brothers, and TorontoMotorsports.com. Jordan Wiseley's been doing big things in his life for a long time. Beyond winning a lot, winning the most recent season of the Challenge, and I think defying a lot of expectations there. You've been getting into motor racing. You've been involved in racing for a little while now, Jordan, and I love the fact that your athleticism, your competitive nature, that thing which has really helped you to succeed in challenge after challenge, seems to also be a perfect fit for your love of motor racing and driving. So we're also going to talk about new movie that you're starring in here in a moment, but let's talk about this intersection of getting behind the wheel and going obscenely fast and doing well in that, and how that fits with your spirit, your approach, your competitive drive. How'd this come about?
Thank you so much for having me, Marshall. Man, I grew up in Mustang, Oklahoma. We're a little town about 20, 30 miles west of Oklahoma City. I grew up on a gravel road, dead end, and we just, adrenaline's free, like you can go out there and we had we had a 3-wheeler and we had a 4-wheeler and a dirt bike at a young age. So we were just cruising. Dad would mow a path in the pasture, and we would just drive around that as fast as he could. And then of course you start putting jumps in it. And then, now everyone's racing, and I got into racing motocross when I was younger. And then when I got to high school, my dad was like, all right, buddy, they don't give scholarships for motocross, so you're going to play sports. And that's what we focused on. So I put the motorsport stuff away. They sold the dirt bikes and stuff. And that was kind of my path for a while. And that competitive nature, that never goes away, and I stopped playing sports in college and then started doing TV, and that took me to the Challenge, which that let me flex my competitive muscles there, and the Challenge is ever changing, which I like, because I consider myself to be very, very well-rounded. And I think that that's what it takes to win in the Challenge. And that, I think, is the biggest crossover with racing. Every single track is a new challenge. Every single racer that you're racing is a new opponent, and they race in a different way, and you've got to set them up in a different way and think about where you are. And then I love adrenaline. So, you get all of that in racing. And then I love the roll cage now that I'm older, a little wiser. So 4 wheels makes a lot more sense than 2.
Let's talk a little bit about this IMSA side of what you're doing. Didn't have the opportunity to catch up in person, unfortunately, at some of the Michelin Pilot Challenge races so far this season, but you have been learning within a great team, a great friend, Brian Herta, his Brian Herta Autosport team, the Hyundai TCR factory program. You've been stuck in, Jordan, with a team that is best of the best. Also a team that's very accustomed to taking those with talent, but maybe not massive amounts of higher level racing experience, and saying, okay, we're going to work with your core skills, develop those, kind of expedite your learning curve. Tell me about that, man, because I got to admit, compared to going to maybe a smaller team where it might take years or add more years to your racing development, seems like you're in here with the perfect group.
It has truly been a whirlwind. Like the speed at which everything happened, the synchronicities of everything, it was actually pretty crazy. So at Daytona, first round of IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge. I got invited out. I was an ambassador for Hyundai, right? So just an influencer, right? You know, and they were like, hey, why don't you come out to the race and hang out with this team? I ran the lollipop in the pits for the BHA team, and got to meet the drivers. And actually, they do their drivers camp. So for about 5 or 6 days before the race, in between the Roar and the Pilot Challenge, we did like different workouts and driving things with like karting, and we do kayak workouts and bike workouts. It was really fun, and I got along with the guys really well. But I got along particularly well with a young driver named Jacob Diley. And the Diley Motorsports is a satellite team of Hyundai and BHA, and they work really closely with BHA. So they're based in Oklahoma City. They're based in Deer Creek, which is about 20 minutes away from where I live.
It's like someone's telling you something here.
I know, and I met Bob Diley, Jacob's dad, who's the owner of Diley Motorsports, and you know, Brian and Sean Jones, they introduced me, and, you know, we hit it off immediately, and they were just, you know, the hometown just helping hand. And they're like, hey, you know, we're doing a test day, a couple test days in a couple weeks out at Hallett, which is in Oklahoma. If you want to come out, you know, we'll put you in a car. You can come just experience the car and stuff. I was like, heck yeah, you know, I'll come out. So I flew out, I got in the car, and I ended up just a couple of seconds off of Jacob and Cabot Bigham, you know, the other drivers. And they were like, hey, you know, you're pretty good at this. You think you could do this? And I was like, yeah, my ego said, yeah, you know? And so they're like, you know, we're going to put you in a race with some people, and we'll see how you do. We'll do a bunch of mock races. So we did that, and I ended up getting even faster. And so they said, here's the deal. Laguna Seca is Hyundai's home race. Right, that's their hallmark. That's they're the marquee sponsor there. It's about 5 weeks away. You know, to get your IMSA license, you need to put together a race resume, and then you need to apply to Bo. And I said,
Bo
okay,
Barfield, race director in IMSA. Yep, good guy, super former racer too.
Yeah, great guy. You know, I got to sit in. I started sitting in on the drivers' meetings at Sebring. Once this even came up, they went ahead and sent me in there at Sebring. So, I've been listening to him, and you know, and I really like the way he handles everything, strict and fair. You know, so that's really nice. But I'm like, look, you got 5 weeks, so get as many races under your belt as you can. So we literally looked around at different local races within Oklahoma. Then we looked at regional races with SCCA, and the Diley Motorsports, they have one of last year's Velosters still, one of those TCR cars. So we ran that in a couple of GT classes with SCCA, and then I also ran a couple spec racer races in a local series in Oklahoma. And so basically, we filled every weekend with a race.
You're drinking from the proverbial fire hose here.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just said, let me, and that's literally what I told him, Marshall. I said, I'm the kind, you know, that I just need to be thrown in the fire. Let me do the thing, and turn my fears into instincts, and I can do this, you know. And they said, okay. And so they basically just gave me all I asked for, and they would have the car there and set up, and just, I can't thank Jacob and Bob enough with Diley. You know, they really went at it for me. We applied to Bo, and he approved it. So I made my debut IMSA appearance at Laguna Seca, and it was insane. It was just like how big it is, you know, and it's one thing to be there and experience it as a fan in the pits and things, but man, you know, I think my heart rate was the highest sitting on the grid before, you know. It was just the anticipation for everything to start was so high. And then once it finally did, you could just sink back into, hey, we're just playing cars.
So my wife was not super happy with me, Jordan, because we got through every episode of the most recent, the Challenge All-Stars, unless I have the name of the exact, there's so many different variations of names, I do get lost a little bit. But
yeah, I think are you talking about the latest one or a different one?
The latest one.
The World Champs.
World Champs, there we go. We got through all but the final episode before I had to fly out for Indianapolis in May. So was there for 18 days, right? Unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. It's never unfortunate to be at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but was there for the Indianapolis Grand Prix, which precedes the Indy 500. The same weekend you were at my home race here at Laguna Seca. So was obviously following that, your progress and everyone's progress at Laguna Seca while in Indianapolis, but had to get home. Had 2 days home before taking off. Just got back yesterday from the 24 Hours of Le Mans. But in that 2 day window I had home between Indy and Le Mans, my wife was like, look, jackass, we're going to finish the challenge, okay? Yeah. I had to avoid every forum, everything. I'm tired of having to avoid to find out who won. And so she and I have been fans of the show forever. So when I first saw hey, Jordan's getting into IMSA, I'm like, good for him, man. This seems to fit who you are. And so we're watching it, and you and Kaz win. And I'm like, okay, this 2023, on top of all the great success, Jordan, you've had before in the challenge, it seems like between what you just achieved with Kaz, now making your IMSA debut, getting accredited by IMSA in such a short amount of time, and Bo Barfield, lifelong friend, he would not license you or anyone who he felt was a joker. So we got to be clear. This isn't some special exception being made for promotional reasons. Bo is not about any of that nonsense. But tell me about this, brother, because it feels like, and again, I know we still got to get the movie that you've done, Helmet, but this feels like 2023 is the year of you, man, and in all the best ways. Tell me about this, because it's not like you're an 18-year-old kid having the first good thing happen to you. It just seems like all the flowers are coming your way right around the same time.
Thank you for noticing, because it has been a grind, and I've had this vision in my mind, honestly, since I was about 17 years old. My best friend in the world, when we were 15, 16 years old, he had a Sony Handycam, and he would make movies in his house and everything. And that's when I was like, this is how you make movies and television. He was like, yeah, dude, you just shoot it and edit it. And I was like, wow. And so I've always wanted to produce and write and act and things. And that's what reality television was for me, So getting into that, and then getting the opportunities that I've had to slog for over the past decade. It is not, the scripted world does not like reality TV people coming over. It's only up until about 3-4 years ago that social media getting bigger and people recognizing that advertising money is advertising money, however you get it. And so now you're seeing people from just Instagram and TikTok and things like that getting acting jobs. When it used to be like a taboo. They would not let people in there. So I would have to fight my way into these rooms and get these opportunities like The Blacklist and SWAT and 2 seasons with Tyler Perry. And that time with him, filming in Atlanta, all those episodes, I truly got to see the hardest working producer in the business. I truly believe that Tyler Perry is. So everything has just been compounding on itself, and I've just been planning, and I've had setbacks, and then there's been triumphs and then setbacks. But I always tell people it never goes up in a straight line, right? It's always up and then down a little bit, up a little bit more and down a little bit. But your newest low is never as low as your last low. That's the goal, right? It's all you're going to keep bouncing, but as long as you keep bouncing up. And so everything that I've done has just been a culmination of setting myself up to be able to pounce on these opportunities. And I just feel that, in the last, 6 months or so, everything has just kind of been falling my way. And it's been mentally, it's been tough, and keeping up with it. I've probably traveled more in this little stint of 23 than I have in the last couple of years combined, just from, I did Ride or Dies, and then as I got back and I left for World Champs, and as soon as we get back from that, I go to London to film there, and then immediately back here to film Helmet. It's just been going and going, and then I went to Daytona. From Daytona, it's been a blur, to getting to here because it's just been all racing, And then on top of that, I own a production. I started a production company a few years back, and we've put out a movie and some commercials and things like that. And now with this racing thing and just what is going on, not just because it's me, but I know how hard it is to get into the racing world. And the opportunity that I've got, I know is very rare. So we're trying to capture as much of that as we can. So we're actually shooting a doc series following this whole thing. We just put out the first episode on YouTube a couple of days ago. It's called Just Drive. And it's basically just documenting, like, I've gone from being a fan to a professional driver, inside 3 months. And now it's a whole new challenge that we're going to have to conquer. All these tracks are new. I've been to Road Atlanta, and that's it. As far as the rest of the schedule. So, Watkins Glen next. I don't know that we're going to make Watkins Glen. Unfortunately, our driver, Jake Diley, he's only 17. I mean, which is amazing. He's the youngest driver on the grid, but in New York, you got to be 18 years old or emancipated to play professional sport. And unfortunately, he didn't get emancipated in time. So I don't know that we're going to make Watkins Glen, but we've got Canadian Tire Motorsports Park next, and that's big boy track. That's big speeds.
That's poop your pants track right there. Old school in the best of ways.
Reach down, grab a set and hang on.
Well, I love the fact as well, Jordan, that the team the greater team you're associated with through the Brian Herta Autosports side, they've been doing big things for years with this program in showing that, look, if you have gone through something unfortunate in life and had some of your mobility taken away, if you have some sort of physical difficulty that you have to overcome and incorporate into your racing, right? This is a team, this is a manufacturer that has said, oh, no, we do not see any barriers here. Michael Johnson being the first, right? Motorcycle racing crash, paralyzed from the waist down. Michael has kicked a lot of butt, had great success with this team. Dear friend Robert Wickens as well. Horrific crash. He's been able to regain a lot of his mobility, but not all. But a race winner in TCR. You as well. One of the great hallmarks of everything you've achieved is saying, you know what, Kay, Lord didn't make me identical to you and everybody else, but guess what? I don't see any barriers here. Tell me about plugging into this team that I'm assuming this greater Hyundai team that would see you and say, oh, no, we're good.
Yeah, that was actually such a pleasant surprise. I wasn't too familiar with Hyundai and what they were doing until they pulled me on as an ambassador. And then after going to literally the first event and activation with them, I immediately saw how plugged in they are with their communities, everywhere that they are. And I got to meet Robert Wickens at the first activation at Road Atlanta, and talking to him and just how much Hyundai stepped in and did that. And then Brian Herta and Sean Jones and what those guys have going over there, they take it upon themselves to kind of seek out those people who are counted out, and that was very apparent to me. And that felt like a really big fit just right away, just being there and being their guest at first. I just felt that right away from team manager, Katie Brandon, all the way through. They were all super supportive. Robert walking me through, everything that they've done with his setup in the car and everything. It's really amazing how much they've done and how much they care. You can see.
Katie's like the warmest human being in the history of Earth.
Yeah, she is a superwoman. Like the amount that she does on a race weekend is incredible.
I grew up with her husband, and the fact that she takes pity on Kyle and me. I mean, those are two of the kinder things in life. Okay, I got one more question for you, and then we're going to talk about your movie. So, hey, you do great things in the challenge have done that. You've had success there, won a number of them. There's usually a pretty serious financial reward for winning the challenge. And so what do you do with those winnings? Oh, you blow it on all kinds of disposable things. No, the exact opposite. Hey, support is needed in Ukraine. What kind of support? I don't know, but I'll find out and I'll buy those things. And I'm not going to like use Amazon Ukraine to just order things and have them dropped off at someone's door. You're there, right?
Yeah.
You're there.
Yeah, we got to make sure.
Tell us about that, Jordan, because you could, in theory, do things the easier way. And again, I'm joking when I'm saying using Amazon Ukraine, but you know, you could probably have a lot of things drop shipped and just stay home in a comfy place. But you have a different approach to helping people, and that's getting in there and doing what's needed on the ground while a war is going on. Of all the things I've seen you do, this is the one that I respect the absolute most.
Thank you very much. It honestly was such a on the whim thing, you know, like as the invasion was breaking out, my roommate and I, he's an ex EMT and firefighter from Boston. We were just watching it and I was like, this is not, and it felt so much like I was just watching a bully, you know, like just trying to get what he wanted. And what the hardest thing to watch was just that the tanks were just lining up and shooting the like apartment buildings and things. And I was like, that's not like war. That's not like real war, you know? So Kevin and I just kind of, at the same time, a light bulb went off, said we should go over there and just help evacuate and then take in supplies. And my grandfather is, he's the head guy at Fort Sill in Oklahoma, in Lawton, Oklahoma. And so I called him and I asked him first, and I said, Grandpa, what, you know, if you were going to help, what's the best way to help? And he knows, and I tell everybody, Marshall, I'm a caveman. You know, I don't do computers and phones and stuff. I'm not good at that. Like, if you need me to show up and move something, I got you. If you need me to show up and wrench on something, I got you. You know, I'm not like a
tech
like
support
a handout suit
for the iPad. Probably not.
No. You know, and I'm not like a handout soup kind of guy. You know, I'm good with hands-on things, and you know, that's just, and logistics and those kind of things. And I'm engineering minded. And so when I asked him, and he knows me, and he said, honestly, grandson, it's going to be supply chain. You know, they're going to need supplies, and that's the number one thing that Russia's going to cut off. So, you know, if I were going to do anything, I would just help them get stuff in. And I said, okay. And that's what we went and did, you know, and we just accumulated more and more vans and box trucks and things like that. And within about 7 or 8 days, the UN had contacted us because we were the first Americans to cross at the Rebenne border crossing. And so they asked us to come in to their hotel and everything in Lviv and kind of brief them on what it was looking like and what places needed and things like that, where we had been. So we started working with them. And then about a month and a half in, we start working with Zelensky's office doing special evacuations.
Ukraine President Zelensky, yep.
Yeah, and so when they evacuate, as the front lines move forward and backwards, when they have to evacuate hospitals, the last people evacuated are the most severe, the ones that are going to be on ventilators and things like that. And so that we were asked, they said, hey, if we can get you guys some special ambulances, can you guys go in and get these special evacs? And we said, okay. So we started doing that. And then it ended up being about 50 days that we were there. We set up an NGO and everything. So that is still operating and everything, but I had booked a film and I had commitments that I had to come back for. And so I come back and got about 2 or 3 days of rest and then went out to the desert and actually filmed. That's when I filmed Helmet.
You know, I love the fact that you got your production company doing a docu-series about the Hyundai stuff, but I'm hoping there are some folks at least sharing or capturing some of the stuff that you were doing in Ukraine, because that, to me, that's the kind of stuff where you go, of all the things we are remembered for, a lot of things that are kind of disposable, right? Did this thing, was personally enriched, it was cool, but Yeah, that's probably not going on your gravestone. He was a good race car driver. He won hall brawls. Like, this is the kind of stuff where you go, okay, that's what we're going to be remembered for. But let's close.
We asked ourselves that, like we literally said, I go, man, it just feels like one of those times in history. And our generation hasn't really seen it that much, We haven't had to make those like tough decisions of like, hey, and when we look back at history, like, and our children or grandchildren are asking like, hey, when this thing happened, like what was going through your head, or like, what did you do? We wanted to, be able to say, well, we did something.
Amen. Let's close on helmet. Now, first question, was that a wig or did you grow your hair out? Because
no, it's me, baby. That's all me. Yeah.
So
man, I grew that for like a year.
Oh, that's amazing.
I got the back permed, it was so great. It was so great. I did. I loved it. I got so many compliments on it too. When I see pictures, I regret cutting it.
Well, it was glorious. It just, yeah. Oh my God. If it doesn't have some sort of Instagram account of its own, I'll be very disappointed. But why don't you tell us about this movie? Because it is, I believe, inspired by a real person. What is it? Because I watched the trailer, and I mentioned before we started recording, I don't know if I could tell you exactly what was going on, but it caught my interest. But set this up.
So, Helmet is the story of a washed-up race car driver set in the 1970s, Los Angeles, and when he had a bad crash and he couldn't get back in the car. He just couldn't get back on the horse and couldn't break that fear. So he went into towing cars, and he's just back in the 70s in Hollywood. The tow truck scene was kind of crazy and lawless. It was first come, first serve. Whoever got there got the tow. So that led to tow truck companies would start setting up oil slicks, or they disconnect people with batteries and things like that. And then just happened to be the tow truck company that's there to help you. But then they also started getting their own territories, and tow truck companies would kind of battle amongst themselves for territory. So really, if I had to kind of explain it, Helmet, if I had to compare it to anything, it's I think Dukes of Hazzard meets Sons of Anarchy.
Jeez.
It's some dark comedy in there, and it's some race inspired fun. But then there's that like grittiness of some like real stuff going on. Some I don't want to say turf wars, but it's kind of battling for position within the city.
I mean, I've seen many movies that involve automobiles. Tow Truck Wars is with a Dukes of Hazzard theme and a little bit of Sons of Anarchy. Those were angles, Jordan, I had not put together in my head. That's amazing. And tell me about this, because you're not new to acting, but in terms of being, the guy in a movie, leading things and such, tell me about that, because again, not a new genre for you, but having your name as one of, if not the central name attached to a film, that seems like another cool step forward for you in your career.
Definitely. I got found at a bar, and I did the Real World, and the Real World is what got me to the challenge. And originally, my last interview process of the whole process, getting on the Real World, they brought it up, and they're like, all right, you're going to be on it. I was not excited. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be known for reality television. I want to act. And my dad was like, dude, ain't nobody coming to Oklahoma and finding you. All right. Like, you're the directors walking around here saying, you come be in my movie. So he goes, you need to say yes. You need to go. And then just make friends with the producers and things and ask them, what do you need to do to become an actor? And so I did. And from there, they said, you need to go to a studio. You need to learn how to act. And I said, okay. And I looked up the best studios in the country, and I found the William Esper Studio in New York City. And I applied and auditioned and got in, did a 2-year program there. And the timing just worked out, because my time there, I had just did the real world. The real world doesn't pay you anything there. So you come off and you're on television, but you don't have anything to show for it. And then do the challenge, and that doesn't pay anything, especially if you don't win. It pays something, but it ain't nothing when you're first starting out. And so it was just a struggling time, and it sucked, but then the timing worked out perfect. And I did X's 2, and I won. And I put a little change in my pocket, and I said, I'm moving to LA while I got the money, and I'm gonna be in movies. I'm gonna start auditioning, and I'm gonna do the thing. And I moved out there. They called me within like 3 or 4 weeks of me moving out there, and like, hey, we're ready. You ready to do Bloodlines? And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm gonna try and do this acting thing. Thank you for calling, but no thanks. So I turned them down, and they leave for that. And about 3 weeks later, I meet Tyler Perry, and he puts me in a show, and that turns into about 34 episodes over 2 seasons. And it was the best thing that could have possibly happened to see how he works and the speed at which we shoot and the responsibility that he gives you as an actor and a creator. I was hooked, from there. And that is what got me into the producing. That is when I realized, I was like, that is where you get the true creative control, just everything overall. So I started a production company in 2018, and we started doing music videos and commercials, and I have a clothing company that we would do the promo for that. And then we got into pilots, and eventually we did our first feature film, which is called The Stalking Fields, and that's out now. You can go and buy and rent that on any platform, Prime, iTunes, Google Play, Roku, whatever you got, it's out there. And this is the path that I want to be. I want to do everything. Just like in my competition, I like to be good at everything. I always tell people I'm doing my best to not have a job. That's my goal. I'm doing my best to not have a job, to act and compete and race, and get that adrenaline and solve the problem of setup and track and competitors. I'm just trying to keep doing that as long as I can.
I always tell folks, like, what do you do for a living? I play with race cars. Like, I was a mechanic, right? I drove a little bit, but I was a race car mechanic for 15, 20 years, whatever, switched over to writing and reporting and whatever with race cars. But what I do for a living is something that contains no social value whatsoever. World hunger has not been cured because I did a video about whatever. I'm truly on the verge of not having a job because I play with race cars in some way, shape, or form. You, on the other hand, doing some things that are definitely more valuable to Earth. But tell folks where and when Helmet can be consumed. And as I said, the trailer intrigued me. I do look forward to seeing the full expression of this, and I hope folks will as well.
Helmet is premiering at the Dances with Films Festival. It's here in Hollywood. It'll be at the Chinese Theater right there on Hollywood Walk of Fame. So that's going to be the premiere July 1st. Oh, nice. And and then from there, we'll be able to let everyone know platforms after that. And then in the meantime, if you go to YouTube, you can watch Just Drive, and that is the current IMSA trek and my journey into IMSA and pro racing. And I'm going to be here for the rest of the season there. And, I'm going to work closely with Hyundai and just learn as much as I can. This is going to be a building year for us, and then we're going to come back really strong and do a full campaign in 24.
I love it. Happy for you, Jordan. Great to see truly someone who just works their behind off, getting their just rewards. Also cool to see that very early in your racing career, your four-wheeled racing career, and you're already gaining traction. So tons to learn, tons to develop within yourself, but you are absolutely connected with all the right people, and look forward to seeing you here a little bit later in the season.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't wait to come back and talk more.
Thanks once again to Jordan for joining us. More than 1,400 episodes here in our podcast catalog. You might pay a visit to MarshallPruittPodcast.com to enjoy the offerings we have there. And thank you once again to Jordan for his time, and to our partners at Cooper Tires, the Justice Brothers, and TorontoMotorsports.com.